you so much for allowing me to be here. My name is Tina Wung. I am the Director of Digital Strategy and Innovation at Anheuser-Busch. My role is to source emerging technology and innovative startups to build mutually beneficial long-term partnerships to help not only the startup, but also to help Anheuser-Busch grow to be a leader in digital excellence. And because of that, I'm really excited to talk today about how to leverage emerging technology and build great brand partnerships with one of my most respected entrepreneurs, Tiki Barber.
I'm back in the New York groove. I'm back in the New York.
Hi, Tiki.
Hello there, Tina. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I cannot complain. Other than a little wet earlier today,
Yes.
I feel fantastic.
I know. I came from California where it's 75 and sunny every day, and I have all this rain.
As long as it goes away by Sunday, because I'm running the New York City Marathon on Sunday.
Oh, good luck. Yeah. Fantastic.
Yes, I'm excited.
So today, we're here to talk about brands and partnering with emerging technology and startups. And for those of you guys who don't know, Tiki has a very great, very innovative one called Thuzio.
Yeah.
And so we'll get into a little bit more about what Thuzio is. But why don't you first tell us, how does one go from being a very successful NFL player with a very illustrious career to being a tech entrepreneur?
Well, I'll back up to my mother. My mother used to always tell me, you could walk down the stairs and break your ankle and never be a football player again for the rest of your life. So I took my academics very seriously and ultimately matriculated to the University of Virginia, where I was a geek. I studied database design and programming in the University of Virginia's Commerce School with a concentration in management information systems. Along the way, though, I got really good at football. Got drafted by the New York Giants and spent 10 years making that knowledge of COBOL and C++ and all those programming languages obsolete. But when I retired, there was a transition that happens, and it happens for a lot of athletes, where you find yourself without a direction. Very fortunately, the relationships that I've made over the years came back to help me. I met Mark Gerson, who was the founder of GLG, the Gerson Lamron Group, through his brother, who I went to school with, and we decided over cigars at Club Macanudo that there was an issue, as I was just alluding to, with athletes not being able to connect with corporations and monetize their brands downstream. Therefore, we created Thuzio, which is a marketplace for athletes to engage with corporate America and PR firms and ad agencies, other brands who are looking to capitalize on their celebrity and influence their marketplace. So that's how Thuzio was founded.
Awesome. Great. Well, can you tell us a little bit about how the idea of Thuzio evolved from its initial conception to what it is today? Because
Yes.
my understanding is that it evolved quite a bit.
Yeah, it did. And I think every startup, and I'm sure there's some small businesses in this room, you start up and you start to evolve. You start to pivot. You start to talk to your customers and realize what they actually want as opposed to the idea that you thought was brilliant. And so we evolved from an e-commerce company into a SaaS product for our corporate clients. As we originally conceived Thuzio, it was all about connecting brands with authenticity and transparency, most importantly, meaning how much is it going to cost for me to get this athlete before I go try to find this athlete. But what we found is that brands wanted to know much more than the cost. They wanted to know where this person was from, where this, what causes is he involved with, what is he good at, what is he all about. And so Thuzio 360, which is now Thuzio, is essentially a database that has all of that intel. Down to the biggest or the most minute detail about our influencers, some of whom are athletes, some of whom are musicians, some of whom are actors and other types of entertainers.
Right.
And we found that our corporate clients really appreciate that because it gives them exactly who they're looking for as opposed to an approximation of who they're looking for.
Right. So in this information age, Thuzio essentially encapsulates all that data that is out there, puts them on one platform, and allows brands or whoever wants to partner with those celebrities search through it really easily,
Yes.
right?
Yes, very, very easily. What used to take 2 weeks or maybe even longer. Does this person write for our demand? You can do in 2 hours, or probably even less than that, through our platform. And that's what makes it so efficient and so enjoyable for our big and small brands.
And very powerful, because I know that coming from a brand, we used to have to work through the talent agencies and have multiple conversations, like everyone and their mother involved. So I wonder then, what role does the agent now play? Because
a big role.
In my mind, it would almost cut out his or her role, or maybe render it a little bit less powerful in negotiations?
Actually, the opposite is true.
Okay.
We have great relationships with agency partners, whether it's an individual agent or whether it's some of the big boys that are out there that represent talent on the sports and entertainment side. Because what we provide is expanded opportunities. We provide them with the direct access to brands, to campaigns that they may not have access to. Because as an agent, you represent 5, 6, 10, 200 talent. You still have to sit and wait for an inbound.
Okay.
We work more on the demand side. So we are curating relationships with all of our business clients, PR agencies, ad agencies, et cetera, and asking them what are they looking for, and then providing them with the intel to solve their problem. So agents actually come to us because we help them, and we help their talent better define and clarify who they actually are.
So I would imagine then, also for that agent who has to represent 200 or whoever so clients, it empowers them, because that data is very helpful for them to search and find the best fit.
Well, they can also correct it,
Yeah,
as opposed to
true.
letting it be out there that this guy is really good at this, and he may not be, or may not even have an interest in it, but they can correct it on our platform, which only allows brands to find, again, the most authentic and perfect person for the campaign that they're looking to engage an influencer in.
Great. So I think that's awesome, because it empowers the agents, it empowers the celebrities, it empowers the brands by basically providing transparent data.
Yeah, well, it was an inefficient market. I mean, as we all know, with a lot of startups in the tech space, you target inefficiencies. And I know this because I was in it. I was a football player in New York City, no less. So the opportunities were plentiful. But the ones that I missed, I could maybe never know about. Now I think there's a pipeline that is it's more easily put together because of the intel that we provide to corporate clients, but also to agents who now can define exactly who their talent is supposed to look like.
Okay, got it. So actually, I want to continue on that thread. You yourself, you are a very in-demand celebrity and athlete, and so I'm just curious as to, when you're considering brand partnerships, what are the most important factors to you to decide whether or not to engage, or to maybe not go forward with that opportunity?
I can give you a couple of examples, and one is actually topical because it's happening this weekend. But at its core, to answer your question simply before I answer it in a more complicated way, I have to be interested. I have to really feel for the product or the campaign. And here's the example. So as I said, I'm running the New York City Marathon this weekend. But I played football for 10 years, and I was a running back for 10 years. So I got beat up a lot. And as a result, I have some laxity in my knee from tearing my PCL, meaning it moves back and forth. I get rubbing in my joint, a cartilage wear. And so that bothers me when I'm running, when I'm getting on a road for 4.5 hours to go run. So I connected with a brand, which I'm sure you've all seen, called KT tape, which is kinetic tape, kinesiology tape. And it supports my joint because it's elastic, but it doesn't restrict me and allows me to run without pain, without discomfort. So it made logical sense for me to associate with that brand. Back in the unsophisticated days of finding talent, I did a campaign for sickle cell anemia. Now, I don't have sickle cell, but it was a campaign that was centered around iron overload and blood transfusions, which some sickle cell patients obviously have to get. So to this day, this was 10 years ago.
People think you have
People
sickle
think
cell
that I have
anemia.
sickle cell. And so it's the evolution of branding with celebrity, with influencers. It has to be authentic because at the end of the day, a campaign that doesn't match ultimately comes off wrong.
So now do you feel that the inbound requests to you are much more targeted and more
they're much more
authentic?
focused. They're
That's
more
good.
on what I'm interested in. As you heard, I'm a children's book author, so I love talking to kids. Me and my twin have 12 books now. Children's books, which is one of the most fulfilling things that we've ever done, because we find from moms and dads that, hey, my son wouldn't read, but when he found your book, he wanted to read it. And so literacy was something that was very important to us. And so we were able to do that via our books, and people know that now. Obviously, being a tech entrepreneur and being involved in all the other things that I've been involved with in New York, it's available for consumption now, as opposed to maybe I'll just guess what he likes, as opposed to knowing what he likes to do.
Exactly. Okay, that's great. I want to touch a little bit on the power of social media, partly because obviously there's so much information that people are putting out there about themselves. They're building really great fan followings, particularly for celebrities and athletes. And I'm just wondering, with your peer group, the athletes, how have you guys really leveraged the power of social media, either for your following or for your persona? And how does that differ with other celebrities, maybe in the movie or the music space?
Yeah, well, I think when Facebook and Twitter, most importantly Twitter, because of how immediate it feels, when it first came out, it was just about having a voice. And athletes, at the time, early on, wanted to have a voice, but they didn't know how to monetize it, right? So Chad Ochocinco, he's now back to Chad Johnson, but you all know who he is. Chad Ochocinco Johnson, or Johnson Ochocinco Johnson.
It's like the P. Diddy equivalent, right?
He has 3.5 million Twitter followers. Now, Super Bowl champion and MVP Russell Wilson, do you know how many Twitter followers he has? 1.3, right? So when Chad Ochocinco, and he's had that for a while, when he first got onto Twitter, he didn't know how to monetize that, or even that he should be monetizing that. He was looking to buy people beers at bars in Miami whenever he was hanging out down at the U. So those type of unsophisticated understanding of the social sphere and how to monetize it has gone away from athletes in some regards, but celebrities and other categories, other genres, have really picked it up, right? You see it in campaigns for, say, Fit Tea. You see reality stars or teeny bopper stars who are supporting different causes and being paid for it and monetized per tweet, right? What's the one with Game of Thrones and I forget the model now, but she's all over these tweet campaigns and probably making a pretty penny. Athletes are still learning how to monetize their popularity while they're playing. And that's something that Thuzio 360 is helping them do as well.
And so who's coaching them in doing that? Is it just, seeing,
Well, see, that's the
peers?
problem. That's the problem. A lot of athletes, I mean, you see this all the time, right? When you talk about paparazzi, you see celebrities and movie stars and musicians. When you see athletes, you see fans, right? You don't actually see, it's not that same kind of attraction for athletes. And so they don't look at their social feeds as interacting with a consuming public. They look at it as interacting with fans who just want to say hi or you're great or sometimes you suck. Meaning the mean tweets are fun. And so that's a job for a company like mine. You're starting to see agents do this now. I did a panel with Will Yoder from Octagon, who's now teaching his talent about monetizing their social feeds. It's sophisticated on certain genres. Athletes haven't quite figured it out yet, but I think you're starting to see that trend happen in the world of sports.
Well, I think that's really exciting, and I think that's a smart move because obviously, for brands, we're looking for people with that really robust following, who's always dialoguing with their followers, who's creating a really great relationship. So that's good for you guys.
It certainly is. I mean, we realize that. I mean, that's one of the reasons that the pivots kept happening, because we would listen to our clients who are big brands or small brands. We always say at Thuzio, we have the banker to the baker as clients for us, small business or big business, because everybody needs to grow their own brand some way, and associating with a brand of an athlete or an influencer is a way to do that. And now we've created transparency on how to do that.
That's really wonderful. I applaud you
Well,
for
thank
having
you.
the foresight to put this together and to build such a great
Well,
platform.
it's listening. You know, it's you know, when we first started, that's not what we were doing. But we listened to our clients, and they would tell us, this is what we need. This is what we would like to see. And so we evolved with them and created a product that I think has a lot of reach across a lot of brands.
So let's shift actually over to the client perspective, because I'm sure that there's a lot of big brands, small business owners that are represented here in the audience today. So I obviously represent a very large company, but how does a small business who maybe doesn't have a whole lot of resources or even knowledge in this space leverage the power of influencers and Thuzio to really make an impact?
Well, I think it's intimidating to look at the space of
Yes.
influencer marketing, and you say, God, that number is so big. There's no way that I can afford that person.
For anyone, though.
For anyone.
Like,
I mean, even big brands think that. But certainly with small brands,
Yes.
it's a factor that often leads them to not go down that route. But what we know is that there is a Beyonce in every small town. I mean that not as a singer hasn't made it yet, but a local celebrity who is maybe even bigger than Beyonce in that town. And I'll give you the example. It'll be a personal example. I played football for 10 years, as you guys know. I was a leading rusher for the New York Giants. But when I left, I went and worked. I was working for NBC, and I was doing a story in Wisconsin, right? And we drafted a kid from Wisconsin. His name was Ron Dane, won the Heisman Trophy, right? Didn't have much of an NFL career. But when I was in Wisconsin, nobody cared that I was a leading rusher for the New York Giants. They only cared to ask me about Ron Dane. What's Ron Dane doing? How's Ron doing? Where's he? And so locally, even though I was more nationally known than Ron Dane, he was much more locally famous than I was. And because his scale is not on, his popularity wasn't as big, his price also isn't as big. And so locally, a campaign centered around Ron Dane is affordable. I think one of the early things that we realized when we created Thuzio was that market forces had never been applied to influencer or celebrity marketing, right? You didn't know what the demand was. So therefore, the price could be whatever you wanted it to be. It was, all right, you work for XYZ Bank, it's 10 times what I would charge this guy. It was arbitrary. Now, there is supply and demand. Those forces are applied to influencer marketing, and we've created that kind of transparency, which I think makes it better for everyone involved. Talent as well.
Yeah, and also for us, who someone would say, oh, Anheuser-Busch, you guys have a really, big checkbook. Like, let's charge you X amount more than, this local brand. But I think your point, though, about localization and personalization is a lesson that can be applicable to anyone, right? Like a big brand, a small company, what have you.
Yeah, well, you flip the question around. What do big brands do? Because it's unlimited resources, seemingly, even though that's not necessarily the case. But big brands have the wherewithal to do this. How do you guys look at it?
So it's really interesting because you and I were just talking today about how this whole influencer phenomenon has really even snuck up on us, right? Because us as a big company, we have utilized our traditional methods of finding celebrity sponsorships and building those partnerships with them through, syndicated data, through maybe like a Polestar or something like that, or working with our trusted agencies, which is an inefficient model, right? So I think for us, we are seeking out, people like you, services such as Thuzio, to create those those efficiencies and that transparency of data, so that we can better educate ourselves on how to go about this business, right? And then the second thing I would say is that we're really doing a lot of testing with new emerging influencers who we might not recognize as the Justin Timberlakes of the world, but maybe the PewDiePies of YouTube, right? And it's engaging those influencers and doing co-creation of content so that we can leverage their authenticity that they have with their followers. And personally, we've done quite a bit of testing in the space, and we're still trying to figure out that right balance of like, how much do you let them have control over the brand, right?
Well, it's still evolving.
How much do we let go? And also how to measure it, right? Because I mean, I think maybe an evolution of what you'll see your clients ask you for is like, okay, well, I know all this data, I know how much they cost. Now, Thuzio, please help, tell me, like, what is the ROI?
Yeah,
What's the return I got?
There's a couple interesting things there. One, and this is a conversation that you and I are having, the first influencer marketer who was a YouTube guy who became enormous was Justin Bieber.
Yeah,
right? People
absolutely.
forget that. He was so far ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
We don't even think about it anymore.
2004.
Exactly. But that space is continually evolving, and especially for bigger brands. I'll give you an example of a company that came to us, and they were looking for, or they didn't come to us. They ultimately came to us, but they were looking for it was an alcohol company, a brand ambassador. And they went down this road and spent all this money and resources finding the perfect talent. Right before the deal was getting ready to be done, they realized that this talent didn't drink alcohol.
Yep.
Right? So that mitigation process is what Thuzio allows.
It would have been one of your first filters.
It would have been the first tag.
Yeah.
And one of the things we didn't talk about is the tags that we have. It's publicly available information or agent or talent imported information about what they really are into. Whatever it may be, it's there and you see it. So you know right away that you're getting a curated and authentic person or talent for your brand.
Yep. Yeah, I think one of the things that really strikes me about Thuzio is that you guys are organizing data in such a smart, transparent, easily manageable way, which as any company, right, in this age of information overload, I think regardless of what data you have, it's all about being able to organize it well, being able to leverage it well, and be able to search through it in a way that is really easy, really transparent, and be able to action off of.
Yeah, that's the idea, is to have confidence in what you're doing, and knowing that the process that you've just gone through, whether it's a month or 10 days, depending on how long or short the campaign is going to be, that you know exactly what you're getting from the influencer that you are now associating with your brand. So there's no risk. Right? It's no different if you were going to buy a stock and you had a Bloomberg terminal and you were going to do all this research before you ultimately made that purchase decision. Thuzio is the equivalent for influencer marketing and brands who are looking to associate themselves with talent. Do all the research before you actually write the check.
And is that how you help sell your clients on utilizing the platform
and
making them comfortable with this idea?
Well, it's interesting because when you look at bigger brands, as you were just alluding to and talking about with your company, it's an education process in some ways because they're used to doing it a certain way. And that's not that way is bad. It's just sometimes, as we've said, inefficient. So we're trying to teach a better way to engage talent and influencers to best represent a brand. And ultimately, as we continue to evolve, because we still consider ourselves startup, even though we're kind of past that phase, we hope to be able to measure the return on those investments for those talent, because that's ultimately what brands really want. It's what they really need, especially if you're a public brand.
Yep. So if you get ahead of that curve, great, and it sounds like you will be. So we're going to open it up to questions in a second, but I want to do a little fun trivia that Thuzio platform can illuminate for everybody. So I'm going to give you a couple celebrities, and you tell me what the Thuzio platform knows about them that maybe people in the audience wouldn't necessarily know.
Okay.
Okay? So the first one is the biggest female pop star right now, music-wise, Taylor Swift. Give us the goods on Taylor Swift.
So Taylor Swift is extraordinarily philanthropic. She's associated with 25 plus causes and organizations. She loves water skiing, and she's a big Harry Potter fan.
Oh, okay, as you are.
As I am as well. I read them in training camp when I was bored in my latter years. Harry Potter was the thing that got me to sleep.
I think everyone loves Harry Potter.
How can you not?
Okay, next celebrity is the world's most eligible bachelor who is no longer eligible.
Not anymore.
George Clooney.
George Clooney.
What do you know about him?
So I know he's a huge sports fan.
Okay.
And this is why I know, because I was at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. And I was walking, he was surrounded by women, of course.
Of course.
And I walked up to him, and he knew who I was. He knew that I was Tiki and not Rondé. So I knew that he was a big sports fan. Well, I don't think he's a Giants fan because I know he's a Bengals fan. I know he's a Dallas Mavericks fan.
Okay.
And I know that he suffers from stomach ulcers.
That's sad.
Yes, it is.
What did you say to him when you met him?
I said to him, I said, God, this must be tough.
Because of all the women.
Because of all the women. I mean, literally surrounded by women. He said, I'm fighting a good fight.
Oh, he's so charming.
Hey, it was a perfect answer.
Yeah.
What else is he going to say?
Okay, and then last celebrity who I understand is one of your early favorite
I
musicians.
was born in
Vanilla Ice.
I was born in 1975.
Who
Who doesn't
Ice
know
was
this song?
still peddling his
Vanilla Ice
services.
has a construction show or a rehab show on HGTV.
Oh.
I'm telling you, Vanilla Ice. Don't, everybody knows it, right? Stop, collaborate, and listen. Ice is back. You guys all know you know this song. Don't even pretend like you don't. Well, Vanilla Ice is a Dallas native.
Okay.
He enjoys biking, and he was once a Kraft Foods endorser.
I used to work there.
Well, nice.
Yeah, great. Okay, so that concludes our portion, and so we would love to open it up to the audience if you guys have any questions for Tiki.
We have a mic somewhere. There.
Hey, Tiki, pleasure
Hey.
to ask you a question. I'm actually a big Patriots fan,
Oh,
so
man.
but respect, all due respect to the Giants. Anyway, I'm really
Of course,
impressed.
you better have respect.
Well,
What are you talking about?
Well,
that's two less
let's
championships
not go
for
down
your
that
guy.
four is okay, and we're going on 5
Yes.
this year. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Don't blame me. I wasn't there. Timing's a bitch.
I'm just personally really impressed by. I'm going to move on to the question now.
Sorry.
No worries. I'm just personally really impressed by all the work you've done and all the things you've been involved in addition to having a prolific 10-year NFL career.
Thank you.
What has been your time management strategy? How have you been able to do so much?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Well, the first reason that it's easier for me is that we hired an unbelievable staff at Thuzio. One of the early philosophies before we hired our CEO, before we hired all of the folks who work for us at Thuzio, was we have to hire people who are smarter than us, who know things about things that we don't know about. I mean, I played football for 10 years. A lot of these, my peers were climbing a corporate ladder, and I was getting my head banged in by Ray Lewis. And so the interactions with marketers and corporations that they did professionally, I didn't have that experience. So we hired people who knew exactly what they were doing, which took a lot of pressure off of us as co-founders. I think, secondly, I've always been a multitasker, and with my radio show in the morning, being co-chairman of Thuzio, having 5 kids, it's all about finding solitude at times to just get away. And interestingly, that's why running has become such a big part of my life, because it calms me. It allows me to not be active at times. It's the same reason that in '09, when I was going through a bad divorce, I bought a Harley so I could be on my bike and no one could talk to me.
Just you in the open
Yeah,
road.
just me in the open road. We call it wind therapy, and it's fantastic.
Great. Next question.
Go ahead. We have a mic
Wait
coming
for the
up,
mic.
but he's hiding in the dark back there. Thank
Hey
you.
guys.
Hello.
My name is Talia. I work with Ticketmaster, and we just started working with a lot of pro athletes on influencer campaigns, and they contribute content. And it's been a really exciting, process for us to be able to connect athletes with fans directly.
Of course.
Great brand halo effect. One of the things that we've been challenged with is, athletes coming with kind of their own personality. So you have an amazing personal brand. How would you recommend an athlete to kind of balance the forces of the leagues, the forces of the brand with their own personality as they're creating their personality? We work with a lot of newcomers.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a great question. How do you? I think what the question actually is how do you get athletes to be more mainstream, and their communications and their understandings of of the world, right? Because I'll tell you this, and you guys know it, you've heard it a million times, I'm sure, if you follow sports. There's a separate culture that exists in a locker room. I've heard it once described as a cool pose, right? Is you have to present yourself a certain way. You have to talk a certain way, even if it's not you. The advice that I've always given athletes, because I've been asked, Steven Jackson, who I think just recently retired, he played for the Rams for a long time in the Atlanta Falcons. His manager came to me and asked, how did you do it? How did you engage with all of these people? And I said, look, I'm going to be frank, perfectly honest with you. Don't hang out with the cool kids. Hang out with the rich kids, right? Because when you hang out with the cool kids and you become uncool, they're not going to want to be your friend anymore. That is when you retire. But you hang out with this other group of people who end up liking you for you more than just liking you for being an athlete, then it has longevity. And it allows you to see the world in a different light, as opposed to just being in that locker room, cool, I'm going out to the club, I'm going to do this culture. And it's hard to do, but I always encourage athletes to do that because it ends. It's like, when I was playing, these guys would buy these zoot suits, right? And they were just like crazy and long and I'm like, when are you ever wearing that again, right? I mean, it looks cool as hell right now, but when are you ever wearing that again? And if you had to go meet the president of, I don't know, Pepsi, would you wear that suit? And the answer was obviously always no. And so I said, well, don't buy it now, right? And so that's the battle you have to fight with athletes. Get them to see that the world is much bigger than, especially in football, so the 1,600 or 1,700 athletes that are in your cool circle.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
You're welcome. Yeah, no, he's coming over here on your right.
So I got a question kind of about something that most people deal with, which is the negative aspect of a brand.
Yeah.
And I know that athletes a lot of times deal with that, and I'm sure one of the big positives of what your service has to offer is kind of, balancing some of that negative stuff. So maybe you or both of you even can probably, speak to dealing with some of that negativity.
Dealing with the negativity, the negative, whether it is social things or tabloid things or whatever it is that may come out. Well, I think social media has actually started to take care of that for some influencers. And I'll give you the perfect example. You remember Johnny Manziel last week, 2 weeks ago? He gets pulled over because someone saw he and his girlfriend arguing on the side of the road. It got reported as Johnny's in an alcohol incident, almost arrested. That was the report. Well, he took to social media, took to Twitter to explain exactly what happened, so that there was the ecosphere of news was not just populated by someone's headline. It was his voice in his explanation of what went on. On our site, we obviously see the negative feeds all the time. Like this guy got a DUI, this guy got whatever. But we allow the marketplace to take care of that. Right? We necessarily won't pull a talent from our site because XYZ happened. The marketplace won't book them, right? It takes care of itself, and it actually allows the brand of the talent to become much more important than I think it used to be 5, 10 years ago, when guys would just do whatever they felt like doing and think that they could get away with it. But now it exists and it lives into perpetuity. Oh, over here. Sorry.
Can you tell us about the time when you had to pivot from your original idea into what you became? Like, what was? I know you mentioned listening, but what really hit you?
Well, I mean, I'll give you an example. So we got some bookings early on. Michael Strahan to go to a birthday party, or me to play flag football. Right before Thuzio existed, if you Googled play flag football with Tiki Barber, you'd get 0 result. So we were creating experiences, which was very, very cool, right? It was on the cutting edge of interacting with athletes. But what we realized very quickly was that on an individual basis, an e-commerce basis, that was a one-off, right? It wasn't a sustainable business. And so we shifted to more corporate clients almost by accident, because most of the bookings started coming from corporate America as opposed to individuals, because we realized that they needed this, right? Whether you're an FA entertaining a client who happens to be a big New York Jets fan and they want to accent that dinner by having a former or current New York Jet there, how would you do that? They came to us, and we were able to facilitate those transactions. And so as we started to see where the demand was coming from, that's where our platform shifted to. And especially as we started to see corporations say, all right, we're going to do a speaking event, and we want a guy who can speak about going through adversity but has won an NFL championship. And, at first we're like, God, who is that? And eventually we came to Carl Nelson, who won a championship with the Giants but also battled cancer. The idea of substitutability is something that we have also started to embrace with our platform, because you may have an idea about this guy. I really, really, really want this guy, but he may cost too much. He may not fit the brand exactly because of the tags that are associated. But here is a comparable alternative that you can also book. And so that became more of what the business was and really what our clients demanded. So that shift happened almost organically, right? It was almost, we didn't have to really push ourselves that way. The business took us that way. Go ahead.
Sorry, I guess that's kind of to add to his question, because I work with a software company and we target CFOs. So
Yes.
I was wondering, is there room for a B2B brand in your business?
Of course. So, Deb is going to be mad at me because I'm not allowed to talk about this, but I will. Thuzio is actually two entities. One is Thuzio 360, which we've been describing here for about 40 minutes. The other side of Thuzio is a Thuzio Executive Club, which is essentially a networking collection of individuals in the major cities in this country. And we know that by pulling those people, like-minded people, individuals together, and centering it around a guest of honor, whether that be Roger Clemens or LT or whoever it may be, we usually do it around the sports calendar, that we're creating business in amongst themselves. In addition to that, one of the club type events that we do is called an insider event. So think of having a conversation, even though it's associated with sports because he owns the Miami Dolphins, a business conversation with Steve Ross or some other big influencer in whatever industry we decide to go into. We do those in our club events because we know that that's what the networking community is looking for. So yes, there absolutely is space for that, and we realize that it's a growing piece of what Thuzio will evolve into or continue to evolve into. Go ahead.
Thanks so much. How do you tell brands how to measure the ROI?
We haven't gotten there yet. That's the next thing, to understand that a talent in a local market, either via social metrics or returns on a product that's being sold, can be measured by the talent that we associated with them. We're still figuring that out, as I'm sure that every marketer is. We all know the traditional way to do things. You throw a billboard up, 5 million people drive by it, but did they actually buy your product? Before I started Thuzio, I was working with a brand that was looking to put in stadium or in arena ads that would flash with a promo code right away, and then try to measure how many people bought a beer or whatever it was right after that promo code aired. And so it's an unsophisticated still process, but one that we are actively looking to tackle because we realize that influencer marketing is where a lot of brands, big and small, are going to go to gain market share. So when we get there, we'll tell you.
Yeah, and from our perspective, we are really pushing our partners. So like a Thuzio or like a Google or YouTube, et cetera, or Millward Brown, your more traditional measurement agencies, to really develop methodologies and algorithms that will leverage the social data and build those types of measurement tools that are customizable for your client. So Google, for instance, they have a new tool that they just piloted called Google Consumer Surveys, which I leveraged as a way to test out my influencers on YouTube, for instance. So to your point, it is very rudimentary right now, but I think that the industry recognizes that this is coming, and so partners are really like scrambling to try to get ahead of that and provide really robust measurement
Agreed.
tools.
Go ahead. Down here in the front.
Thanks for being here, Tiki.
Appreciate
Listen to you most mornings on CBS Sports Radio.
Oh, I love that.
Out in Ohio.
I appreciate the plug.
I'm a New York transplant, so I get a little taste of New York every morning
Oh, I
on my way
love
to
it.
work.
I love it. My partner's a maniac, so don't blame me for his comments.
I enjoy it. It's a good time, for sure. So my question revolves around authenticity. It
Yes.
seems that brands are seeking more authenticity from their the people that they're looking to endorse their products. Fans are looking for more authenticity from the athletes. And athletes are also looking for that outlet too, right? So I think we've got some really good examples in the last few years or so with Thuzio, the Players Tribune, which I'm a huge fan of Derek Jeter. As we look into the next 2 years or so, do you see an opportunity for more athletes like yourself and entrepreneurs like Derek Jeter where you start to, I think you know where I'm getting at.
No.
Is there an opportunity to break off
here's
from
the
rented
opportunity. Here's the
platforms?
opportunity, and this is one of the early thoughts that I had at Thuzio as we started to see my company grow and find success. There are other guys who have great ideas, right? But they just don't know how to connect, or they don't have the right relationship. They don't have the Rick Gerson, who is my friend, who can connect me to Mark Gerson, who is his brother and great entrepreneur, right? It just doesn't, those organic connections don't happen. And so I always had this idea about creating a Thuzio U, which is really just an intel for athletes. Now, I've always suggested this, and I talked to Mark Emmert, who is the president of the NCAA, about curriculum for athletes in college. Right? If you wanted to if you want to grow up and be a concert pianist, right? You can go major in music at a university. If you want to do anything outside of the big sports, you can't go major in it. Now, I'm not saying go major in football and take underwater basket weaving and things of that nature. But I am saying if you know that your goal, and you're probably only going to be in school for 6 months if you're a basketball player, or maybe 3 years or 2 years if you're a football player, give them a curriculum that prepares them for the other things that are going to come along with being a professional athlete, including obviously the financial literature, some business classes, things that they understand the environment that they're going to be in. Now, it's not going to happen on the NCAA level anytime soon, but I do think the opportunity is to create that, post-schooling, whether it's 1 year or 4 years or 5 or whatever it is, for athletes who do become professional. Now, could that exist under Thuzio? Yeah, it certainly could, but it's not where our focus is at this moment. But it is an opportunity. It certainly is, because what Derek created with the Players Tribune, what I'm creating with Thuzio, it's not unique, right? Anyone could do it if they have the right connections and partners and understanding of this community. The problem is they don't get into this community until it's probably too late.
I think we have time for 1 or 2 more questions.
Right here in front.
So I'm Ashley from American Family Insurance, and we use sports athletes all the time in our commercials and in our interactions, and we kind of put them in the community so they have some local things that they get to do as well, which is great. But from an organizational perspective, a lot of times marketing gets a bad rap, like, what's the value to the company? IS or accounting comes to us and they're like, oh, there's JJ Watt walking down the hall. What are you guys doing? How is that helping the brand? So can you speak to how that helps the brand in general, or some things that you've had to overcome, just kind of getting buy-in from other parts of the organization?
Yeah, no, I think you make it's an important question to ask, because a lot of athletes sometimes just feel like an in-the-moment celebrity. Like they don't necessarily extend beyond that immediate campaign. And that's where Thuzio with 360 has started to leverage the social media side of it. Right? We see it with the other types of celebrities, the musicians and et cetera, who use their social media platforms to monetize. But we encourage our clients to put in a social media side of it, and whether you pin it or whatever it is, so it becomes part of their profile as in addition to the things that they're doing in the brand campaign or the event that a local athlete may be going to, because that lives. Right? Social lives in some capacities if you have the right kind of athletes with the right kind of following. And so that's one of the things that we always talk about, right? Look at social metrics, right? Look at where he rates amongst his peers. Look at where he ranks amongst his teammates, or look where he ranks amongst athletes as a whole locally, and find a way from there to build a different contract rather than okay, you're going to show up for two appearances for an hour, sign autographs, and then that brand association kind of dissipates other than a picture or an autograph that someone took.
Okay. I think that's all the time we have. So everyone, round of applause for Tiki Barber.
Thank you, Tina.
Thank you.